The Mojave does not greet newcomers with noise or chaos. It greets them with stillness. Long stretches of sun-bleached earth lie quietly beneath an endless sky, broken only by rusted highways, distant ridgelines, and the soft whisper of wind passing through dry grass. Fallout New Vegas begins not with spectacle, but with silence, inviting the listener into a land shaped less by sudden destruction and more by slow endurance. This is a place where history lingers gently rather than shouting its presence, and where every step forward feels measured, unhurried, and deeply aware of what came before. Long before the bombs fell, the Mojave was already a land of contrasts. Bright lights glowed in Las Vegas, drawing visitors from across the nation, while just beyond the city's edge stretched open desert, quiet and indifferent. Hoover Dam stood as a monument to human ambition, holding back the Colorado River and powering the region with steady reliability. Towns grew along trade routes and rail lines, shaped by movement rather than permanence. Even then, the Mojave was a place where people passed through more often than they stayed, leaving behind traces rather than roots. When the Great War came, the Mojave was spared the worst of the nuclear fire. Las Vegas itself was protected by a pre-war defense system designed by Robert House, intercepting many of the incoming warheads before they could strike. The city was damaged, but not erased. Skyscrapers still stood. Streets remained recognizable. This partial survival would shape everything that followed, allowing the Mojave to retain echoes of the old world longer than most places. Fallout New Vegas unfolds in the shadow of this survival, exploring what happens when civilization collapses unevenly rather than completely. In the years after the war, the Mojave slowly reorganized itself. People emerged from shelters, wandered in from distant regions, and settled wherever water, safety, or opportunity could be found. Small communities formed along highways and near sources of clean water. The desert became a corridor rather than an obstacle, guiding movement between settlements through well-worn paths and trade routes. Life here was never easy, but it was consistent. The Mojave rewarded patience and punished haste, teaching its inhabitants to move carefully and live deliberately. Goods flowed steadily through the region, carried by caravans that connected distant towns through shared necessity. Brahmin trains crossed the desert under the watchful eyes of hired guards, their bells and footsteps becoming familiar sounds along the road. Trade became the backbone of Mojave society, not because people trusted one another, but because they needed one another. Fallout New Vegas treats this economy quietly, showing how survival often depends less on ideology and more on cooperation shaped by routine. As the Mojave stabilized, power began to consolidate, not through sudden conquest, but through gradual influence. The new California Republic arrived from the West, bringing with it the language of law, order, and expansion. The NCR spoke of taxes, citizenship, and protection, offering structure to communities that had long relied on self-sufficiency. Their presence grew slowly at first, marked by outposts and patrols, then more visibly as roads were secured and borders enforced. To some, the NCR represented progress. To others, it felt like the return of an old world that had already failed once. Opposing this expansion was Caesar's Legion, rising from the east. Where the NCR brought bureaucracy and compromise, the Legion brought certainty and fear. Their society was rigid, hierarchical, and brutal, rejecting pre-war technology in favor of discipline and obedience. To the Legion, the old world's mistakes lay in its weakness, its reliance on comfort and excess. The Mojave became the meeting ground for these two visions, neither fully belonging to the land they sought to control, yet both shaping it profoundly. Hovering above these struggles was Robert House, preserved within the Lucky 38, watching the Mojave unfold with calculated patience. House did not seek territory in the traditional sense. He sought stability. His vision was one of controlled preservation, where chaos was minimized and progress occurred under careful supervision. The strip stood as proof of his success, its lights glowing against the desert night, untouched by decay. Fallout New Vegas presents House not as a ruler of people, but as a custodian of systems, maintaining order through preparation rather than ideology. At the heart of all this stood the Mojave itself, unmoved by politics or ambition. The desert does not favor one faction over another. It responds only to action, consistency, and respect. Settlements that adapt endure. Those that overextend falter. Fallout New Vegas allows the land to remain neutral, a quiet observer to human conflict rather than a participant in it. This neutrality gives the story its unique tone, grounding grand ideas in a landscape that resists being shaped entirely by any single force. Towns like Goodsprings exist almost unnoticed within this broader struggle, their lives shaped by daily routines rather than distant wars. People wake, work, trade, and rest, repeating patterns that give structure to otherwise uncertain lives. Fallout New Vegas excels at capturing these small moments, reminding the listener that history is lived not only through battles and decisions, but through ordinary days strung together quietly. The roads of the Mojave carry more than supplies, they carry stories. Worn signs point toward places long abandoned. Skeletons rest beside suitcases, frozen in the act of leaving or arriving. Terminals still glow faintly in empty buildings, preserving fragments of conversations that ended centuries ago. These details are never emphasized loudly. They exist patiently, waiting for those who slow down enough to notice them. The strip itself stands as a contradiction. Bright lights shine where darkness should have claimed everything. Music plays softly through empty halls. Machines continue to function long after their creators are gone. The casinos operate not as centers of excess, but as controlled environments, carefully maintained by House's planning. Fallout New Vegas uses the strip to explore the idea that survival does not always look like rebuilding. Sometimes, it looks like preserving a moment in time and refusing to let it fade. As the Mojave settles into its uneasy balance, tension grows quietly rather than explosively. NCR patrols cross paths with Legion scouts. House's influence spreads subtly through contracts and Securitrons. Independent settlements weigh their options carefully, knowing that neutrality rarely lasts forever. Fallout New Vegas does not rush these developments. It allows them to simmer, reinforcing the sense that the Mojave's future will be decided not in a single moment, but through accumulated choices. And through it all, the desert remains calm. The sun rises and sets without concern for who controls Hoover Dam. The wind moves through canyons and over highways unchanged. Life continues in its slow, resilient way, adapting rather than resisting. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to rest within this stillness, to drift through a world where history feels close, conflict feels distant, and time moves just slowly enough to be felt. This is the Mojave at rest, before decisions are made and paths are chosen, a land shaped by survival, memory, and quiet persistence. And as the story continues, it will not rush forward, but unfold gently, one step at a time, beneath an endless sky that watches patiently as the world decides what it will become next. The Mojave continues to reveal itself, not through sudden revelation, but through familiarity. As days pass beneath the open sky, the land begins to feel less like an obstacle and more like a presence, something steady that shapes behavior without demanding attention. Roads stretch outward in long, sun-worn lines, guiding travelers between places that feel distant yet connected by shared necessity. Fallout New Vegas allows this sense of space to breathe, letting the listener settle into the rhythm of travel, where movement itself becomes a quiet form of reflection. Communities across the Mojave survive not because they are powerful, but because they are deliberate. Towns are placed near water, along trade routes, or beside remnants of old-world infrastructure that still offer shelter or utility. Places like Primm, Nipton, and Novak exist as pauses along the road, their identities shaped by what they offer travelers rather than by grand ambition. Fallout New Vegas treats these settlements gently, presenting them as lived-in spaces where people focus on tomorrow more than yesterday. Trade remains the lifeblood of the region, flowing steadily through caravan companies that accept risk as part of routine. Crimson Caravan and the Gunrunners operate not as conquerors, but as facilitators, moving weapons, food, and supplies through territory shaped by uncertainty. Their roots define the Mojave as much as its geography does, creating invisible lines of dependence that bind distant towns together. Fallout New Vegas presents this economy quietly, emphasizing routine over profit, continuity over growth. The new California Republic's presence becomes more noticeable the longer one lingers in the Mojave. Their outposts dot the landscape, manned by soldiers who speak more of logistics than glory. Many are tired, stretched thin by long supply lines and unfamiliar terrain. The NCR's ambition to bring law and order feels genuine, yet burdened by bureaucracy and distance from its core territories. Fallout New Vegas presents the NCR not as villains or heroes, but as a system struggling to expand faster than it can sustain. This strain is visible in small details. Soldiers complain quietly about shortages. Officers juggle conflicting orders. Settlements express mixed feelings about NCR protection, appreciating the safety while resenting the taxes and oversight that come with it. Fallout New Vegas allows these contradictions to exist without judgment, reinforcing the idea that rebuilding civilization is rarely clean or simple. In contrast, Caesar's Legion operates with stark clarity. Their presence is felt even when unseen, carried through rumor, fear, and the aftermath left behind. The Legion rejects the old world entirely, viewing its technology and comforts as the root of weakness. Their society is harsh, disciplined, and unforgiving, built on absolute obedience and the erasure of individuality. Fallout New Vegas presents the Legion with restraint, allowing their philosophy to speak through action rather than exposition. Where the NCR relies on systems and compromise, the Legion relies on certainty. This certainty offers stability of a different kind, one rooted in fear and unquestioned authority. The Mojave becomes the proving ground for these opposing visions, neither fully aligned with the land they seek to control. Fallout New Vegas treats this ideological clash as background tension rather than constant conflict, letting it simmer quietly beneath everyday life. Above these factions, Robert House remains a distant constant, watching from within the Lucky 38. His influence is subtle but pervasive, felt through the Securitrons that patrol the Strip and enforce its boundaries. House does not concern himself with ideology or expansion beyond what is necessary. His focus is preservation, ensuring that the Strip remains stable, predictable, and insulated from the chaos beyond its walls. Fallout New Vegas presents House as a figure of stillness amid movement, a reminder that control can take many forms. The Strip itself feels almost suspended in time. Neon lights glow steadily against the dark desert, Music hums softly through polished halls, and machines continue their routines without pause. Unlike the wasteland beyond, the strip feels controlled, intentional, and curated. Fallout New Vegas uses this contrast to explore how survival can sometimes mean freezing the past in place rather than rebuilding it. Beyond the strip, the Mojave's quieter locations tell stories through absence rather than dialogue. Abandoned ranger stations, collapsed motels, and empty drive-ins stand as reminders of a world that once moved quickly and confidently. Now, these places exist as markers of transition, caught between memory and decay. Fallout New Vegas allows these spaces to remain understated, trusting atmosphere to carry meaning. The desert itself shapes behavior more than any faction does. Travel is planned around daylight and water. Shelter is chosen carefully. Even conflict unfolds at the land's pace, often ending as quickly as it begins. Fallout New Vegas grounds its narrative in this environmental reality, reminding the listener that the Mojave's greatest influence is not political, but natural. As night falls, the Mojave transforms gently. Temperatures drop. The sky opens wide with stars untouched by light pollution. Fires glow softly outside settlements, and distant lights mark safe havens across the darkened landscape. These moments of quiet are essential to Fallout New Vegas's tone, offering rest between decisions rather than pushing relentlessly forward. The radio carries familiar voices across the desert, its songs blending nostalgia with endurance. Music becomes a companion on long journeys, softening the silence without overwhelming it. Fallout New Vegas understands the power of sound to anchor emotion, using it to create comfort without denying the world's harshness. Through all of this, the Mojave remains unresolved. Its future is undecided, shaped by choices not yet made. Fallout New Vegas does not rush toward answers. It allows tension to exist alongside calm, conflict alongside routine. The land waits, patient and indifferent, as people move through it, carrying ambition, fear, and hope in equal measure. This is the Mojave in motion, not through war or conquest, but through steady persistence, a place where history feels close, the future feels open, and the present unfolds slowly beneath an endless sky. And as the journey continues, the land will keep offering its quiet companionship, guiding each step forward without ever demanding where it must lead. The Mojave's deeper stories begin to surface not through banners or speeches, but through the people who live quietly within its margins. Away from the Strip and the major factions, smaller communities persist with little interest in who ultimately claims Hoover Dam. Their concerns are simpler and far more immediate: clean water, reliable shelter, a sense that tomorrow will resemble today closely enough to plan for it. Fallout New Vegas gives these places time to breathe, allowing their existence to ground the broader conflict in lived experience. Goodsprings rests gently at the edge of the Mojave, its identity shaped by routine rather than ambition. People gather around the same buildings each day, exchange familiar greetings, and repeat tasks that give structure to life in an uncertain world. There is no rush here, no hunger for expansion. Survival comes from knowing the land, trusting neighbors, and avoiding attention. Fallout New Vegas treats this quiet stability with respect, presenting it as a valid form of endurance rather than stagnation. Further along the road, towns like Novak and Prim reveal how identity can form around remnants of the old world. A dinosaur statue becomes a landmark and a watchtower. A roller coaster becomes a memory rather than a destination. These places do not rebuild the past so much as repurpose it, using what remains to create meaning in the present. Fallout New Vegas excels at showing how humans adapt symbolically as well as physically, finding comfort in familiar shapes, even when their original purpose is long gone. The Mojave Outpost stands as a threshold rather than a stronghold, marking the edge of NCR influence while acknowledging the uncertainty beyond. Soldiers stationed here speak of duty, but also of boredom, exhaustion, and distance from home. Their presence is less about control and more about containment, an attempt to hold the line between order and the unknown. Fallout New Vegas uses the outpost to illustrate how expansion stretches even well-intentioned systems thin. Beyond these structured spaces lie places shaped by choice rather than oversight. Freeside exists just outside the Strip's glow, its streets filled with those who benefit indirectly from House's preservation while remaining excluded from it. Life here is harder, louder, and less predictable. Yet it is also more honest. Fallout New Vegas presents Freeside as a reflection of the Mojave itself, unpolished, resourceful, and shaped by cooperation born from necessity rather than design. The Kings, with their imitation of a long-dead cultural icon, embody this strange inheritance of the past. Their devotion is not ironic or strategic. It is sincere, born from admiration rather than control. Fallout New Vegas uses them to show how identity can form organically from fragments of history, reshaped into something new rather than preserved intact. In the Mojave, the past is not worshipped, it is reinterpreted. Across the desert, the followers of the apocalypse work quietly to preserve knowledge and offer aid without allegiance. Their clinics and outposts focus on healing rather than control, education rather than power. They represent a different response to the collapse of civilization, one that seeks understanding over dominance. Fallout New Vegas treats the followers with gentle nuance, acknowledging their idealism while recognizing the limitations they face in a world shaped by force. Hoover Dam looms larger as these threads intertwine, its presence felt long before it is seen. The steady flow of the Colorado River stands in contrast to the desert's dryness, symbolizing continuity amid scarcity. The dam is not merely infrastructure, it is leverage. Whoever controls it shapes the Mojave's future, determining who has power, water, and stability. Fallout New Vegas allows this significance to build gradually, reinforcing the idea that the most important battles are often fought over resources rather than territory. As the Mojave's factions maneuver, the land itself remains steady. Storms pass, temperatures shift. The sun traces the same arc across the sky each day. Fallout New Vegas grounds its narrative in this constancy, reminding the listener that human conflict unfolds within a world that does not pause to acknowledge it. This perspective softens the tension, turning grand struggles into small movements beneath an endless horizon. Travel between these places becomes a form of meditation. Long stretches of road invite reflection rather than urgency. The sound of footsteps, the hum of distant generators, and the occasional call of wildlife blend into a steady backdrop. Fallout New Vegas understands that quiet movement can carry as much meaning as dialogue, allowing the listener to rest within the journey rather than rush toward its end. The Mojave's past reveals itself in fragments scattered across the land. Terminals glow faintly in abandoned offices. Notes rest where hands last placed them centuries ago. Skeletons lie beside suitcases, caught between leaving and staying. These moments are never explained fully. They exist as silent witnesses to decisions made under pressure. Fallout New Vegas trusts the listener to feel their weight without instruction. As night settles over the desert, the Mojave becomes vast and open. Stars fill the sky, untouched by artificial light. Fires flicker outside settlements, marking safe spaces in the darkness. The Strip glows in the distance, steady and unchanged. These contrasts define the Mojave's character, blending calm with uncertainty, preservation with decay. The radio continues to carry familiar voices across the land, its music softening the silence without erasing it. Songs from another era drift through the desert air, offering comfort without illusion. Fallout New Vegas uses sound not as distraction, but as grounding, reminding the listener that memory can coexist with endurance. Through all of this, the Mojave remains unresolved. Its future is shaped quietly, decision by decision, by those who move through it. Fallout New Vegas does not demand a single path forward. It allows space for reflection, for pause, for understanding that survival is not about winning, but about continuing. This is the Mojave between moments of choice, where life unfolds steadily beneath the sun and stars. A land shaped by patience as much as conflict, offering its stories not loudly, but gently, to anyone willing to listen long enough to hear them. As the Mojave's story deepens, its quieter forces become clearer, shaping the land without drawing attention to themselves. Beyond armies and leaders, there are systems of belief, habit, and memory that guide daily life more strongly than any flag ever could. Fallout New Vegas allows these undercurrents to surface slowly, revealing a world held together not by conquest, but by repetition and shared understanding built over time. The roads remain the Mojave's true arteries. They carry not just caravans and travelers, but ideas, rumors, and expectations. Every mile traveled adds to the unspoken knowledge of the land where water can be found, where danger tends to linger, where people can be trusted. This knowledge is rarely written down. It is passed quietly from one person to another, shaping movement more effectively than maps or orders. Fallout New Vegas treats this informal network of understanding as one of the Mojave's most important structures. Caravan guards and traders become historians without realizing it. They remember which towns welcomed them and which turned them away. They know which routes are safer at night and which should be avoided altogether. Their stories travel farther than official reports ever could, influencing decisions across the region. Fallout New Vegas uses these unseen exchanges to show how power often flows through information rather than force. Scattered across the desert are reminders of older conflicts that never fully resolved. Ruined ranger stations, collapsed bunkers, and abandoned campsites speak to battles that ended quietly rather than decisively. These places feel paused, as though the land absorbed the violence and moved on without ceremony. Fallout New Vegas does not dramatize these remnants. It lets them exist as part of the landscape, softened by time and sand. The NCR's influence continues to spread unevenly, strongest where roads are secured, and weakest where distance stretches supply lines thin. Their presence brings paperwork, regulations, and a sense of predictability that appeals to some and frustrates others. Fallout New Vegas shows how large systems struggle to adapt to local realities, especially in a land as vast and varied as the Mojave. Authority here feels negotiated rather than absolute. In contrast, the Legion's absence can feel heavier than its presence. Even far from their camps, stories of their discipline and brutality shape behavior. Fear becomes a form of control, influencing decisions without requiring constant enforcement. Fallout New Vegas uses this distant influence to demonstrate how power can extend far beyond physical borders when reputation alone is enough. Robert House remains unchanged at the center of it all, a constant figure whose plans stretch further into the future than anyone else's. His vision for the Mojave is orderly, efficient, and insulated from uncertainty. The Strip operates as a controlled environment, its systems maintained carefully to prevent decay. Fallout New Vegas presents House's world as impressive yet fragile, stable only as long as control remains absolute. Beyond these powers, independent groups navigate the Mojave according to their own values. The Boomers isolate themselves completely, preserving technology and tradition through strict separation. Their world feels secure but distant, untouched by the daily struggles of the wider Mojave. Fallout New Vegas uses the Boomers to explore how isolation can preserve strength while limiting understanding. The Great Khans carry a different legacy, shaped by loss, displacement, and resentment. Their history is one of repeated conflict with expanding powers, leaving them wary and defensive. Fallout New Vegas treats the Khans with empathy, acknowledging how cycles of retaliation can trap communities in identities shaped by trauma rather than choice. Across the desert, Old World technology continues to influence survival in subtle ways. Radios hum softly in remote locations. Terminals still hold fragments of past decisions. Weapons built centuries ago remain in use, maintained through habit rather than understanding. Fallout New Vegas presents this technological persistence as neither good nor bad, simply another layer of inheritance shaping the present. The Mojave's wildlife adapts quietly alongside human settlements. Creatures find balance in altered ecosystems, filling niches left behind by extinction. Their presence reinforces the idea that life continues regardless of human ambition. Fallout New Vegas allows these natural rhythms to coexist with political conflict, grounding the story in a world larger than any faction's goals. As time passes, the idea of destiny feels less important than momentum. The Mojave does not push its inhabitants toward a single outcome. It responds to what they do, not what they intend. Fallout New Vegas reflects this philosophy by allowing the world to feel open-ended, shaped by accumulation rather than climax. Night once again settles across the desert, bringing stillness and clarity. The stars feel closer here, untouched by city light. Settlements glow softly in the distance, islands of warmth surrounded by vast dark space. Fallout New Vegas uses these moments to offer rest, reminding the listener that even in uncertain times, there is space to breathe. The radio's familiar voices return, steady and calm, carrying music across long stretches of open land. These songs become companions, marking time rather than progress. Fallout New Vegas understands that comfort does not come from resolution, but from familiarity carried forward. Through all of this, the Mojave remains patient. It does not hurry toward its future. It allows choices to form slowly, shaped by lived experience rather than imposed ideology. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to exist within this patience, to drift alongside a world where history feels close, the future feels open, and the present unfolds quietly beneath a wide, endless sky. This is the Mojave in balance, held together by habit, memory, and shared understanding rather than force. A place where survival is not about victory, but about endurance, and where life continues not loudly, but steadily, guided by the land itself as it waits for whatever comes next. The Mojave story begins to slow even further here, settling into a steady rhythm where change happens almost imperceptibly. This is a land that has learned patience, shaped by long stretches of waiting rather than sudden transformation. Fallout New Vegas allows the listener to rest within this patience, to feel how the Mojave carries history not as a burden, but as a quiet presence that informs each step forward. In the spaces between settlements, the desert feels vast and uninterrupted. Roads stretch toward the horizon, with no promise of destination, only continuation. Traveling through these stretches becomes a reflective act, where thought drifts as freely as the wind across the sand. Fallout New Vegas understands the importance of these moments, letting silence speak where dialogue would feel intrusive. The Mojave does not demand constant attention. It rewards those who move through it slowly. The people who thrive here are often those who have learned to read subtle signs: a change in wind, a quiet shift in animal movement, the absence of familiar caravan bells along a well-traveled route. These small indicators guide decisions more effectively than orders or maps. Fallout New Vegas presents survival as an intuitive process, shaped by observation rather than control. Independent settlements continue to define themselves through routine. Farming communities measure time by harvests rather than calendars. Mechanics rebuild old machines piece by piece, preserving function through familiarity rather than innovation. Shopkeepers open their doors each morning not because the future is secure, but because the present demands consistency. Fallout New Vegas treats these routines as acts of resilience, grounding the world in repetition rather than ambition. The Mojave's factions remain present, but their influence feels less urgent here. NCR patrols pass occasionally, Legion scouts appear and vanish without warning, and House's Securitrons remain distant silhouettes against the Strip's glow. Fallout New Vegas allows these forces to fade into the background, reminding the listener that most lives are lived beyond the edges of grand conflict. The desert's relationship with time feels different than anywhere else. Days blur together under the sun, nights stretch wide and quiet beneath the stars. Without constant reminders of progress or decline, the Mojave exists in a kind of extended present. Fallout New Vegas captures this sensation beautifully, allowing the world to feel suspended rather than stagnant. Ruins scattered across the land take on new meaning in this stillness. They no longer feel like warnings or lessons. They feel like landmarks, quietly integrated into daily life. Old billboards offer shade. Collapsed buildings become shelters. Broken highways guide movement just as effectively as intact ones once did. Fallout New Vegas shows how the past becomes practical rather than symbolic when survival depends on adaptation. The presence of old-world technology continues to shape behavior in subtle ways. Radios remain trusted companions. Weapons are maintained carefully, passed down rather than replaced. Terminals glow faintly in dark rooms, preserving fragments of information that may never be read again. Fallout New Vegas treats these remnants not as relics, but as tools woven naturally into the present. Across the Mojave, memory persists through storytelling rather than record-keeping. Tales of lost towns, dangerous roads, and unexpected kindness travel with caravans and travelers. These stories shape expectations and guide movement, forming an oral map of the region that changes over time. Fallout New Vegas emphasizes this living history, showing how the Mojave remembers itself through shared experience. As the night deepens, the desert becomes even quieter. Fires burn low outside settlements. Distant lights flicker against the dark. The Strip's glow remains steady, a constant point of reference against the vastness beyond. Fallout New Vegas uses these nighttime moments to invite rest, offering a sense of calm that contrasts gently with the uncertainty of the day. Music drifts once more across the open land, its familiar melodies softening the silence without breaking it. The radio's voice feels steady and reassuring, a reminder that even in isolation, connection persists. Fallout New Vegas understands how sound anchors emotion, using it to create comfort rather than distraction. The Mojave's future remains undecided, but that uncertainty feels less pressing here. The land has endured countless attempts to shape it, and it remains largely unchanged. Fallout New Vegas suggests that survival here is not about winning control, but about learning coexistence with the land, with others, and with the past. In these quiet stretches, the Mojave feels almost timeless. not frozen, but gently moving forward at its own pace. The desert does not rush toward resolution. It allows life to unfold gradually, shaped by small choices rather than decisive moments. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to rest within this unfolding, to let the world pass without urgency. This is the Mojave between decisions, where nothing demands action and everything invites reflection, a place where endurance matters more than dominance, where survival is measured in days strung together quietly beneath an endless sky. And as the journey continues, the land remains patient, offering its silence, its space, and its steady companionship to anyone willing to move at its pace. The Mojave settles even deeper into its familiar calm, as if the land itself has exhaled and decided there is no need to hurry. By now, everything feels gently interconnected: the roads, the settlements, the people, the silence between them. Fallout New Vegas allows this interconnectedness to exist without explanation, letting the listener feel how the Mojave functions not as a collection of locations, but as a living region shaped by shared endurance. Travel becomes almost instinctive here. The body learns the pace the land prefers, neither rushed nor stalled. Footsteps fall into rhythm with the wind, and the sound of movement blends naturally into the desert's quiet hum. Fallout New Vegas excels in these moments, where nothing urgent happens, and yet everything feels purposeful simply because it continues. The Mojave does not demand constant awareness. It invites presence. Settlements feel more like habits than places. They exist where people expect them to be, offering familiarity rather than surprise. Doors open at the same times. Fires are lit in the same spots each evening. The routines do not suggest comfort so much as reliability, and in the Mojave, reliability is a form of safety. Fallout New Vegas presents these patterns as quiet victories over chaos, not dramatic achievements, but sustained ones. Even conflict feels distant in this part of the world. Rumors travel slowly, softened by distance and repetition. Stories of skirmishes and shifting borders sound less like calls to action and more like background noise, acknowledged and then set aside. Fallout New Vegas reminds the listener that most people live alongside conflict rather than inside it, adjusting their lives around its edges rather than confronting it directly. The land continues to shape identity in subtle ways. People speak with an understanding of distance and scarcity woven into their words. Directions are given in landmarks rather than measurements. Time is described by daylight rather than hours. Fallout New Vegas uses these details to show how environment influences culture quietly, without conscious design. Old world remnants continue to serve new purposes. A rusted car becomes shelter from the sun. A broken sign marks a meeting point. A collapsed building offers protection from wind and cold. Fallout New Vegas treats these adaptations gently, reinforcing the idea that survival often comes from reinterpreting what remains rather than replacing it. The Mojave's wildlife moves with equal familiarity. Creatures follow patterns shaped by altered ecosystems, avoiding human paths when possible and crossing them when necessary. Their presence feels integrated rather than threatening another part of the land's rhythm. Fallout New Vegas allows this coexistence to exist calmly, grounding the world in natural continuity. As the day fades, the desert's colors soften. The harsh brightness of sunlight gives way to muted tones, shadows stretching long across the ground. This transition feels unremarkable, and that is its power. Fallout New Vegas understands that beauty often lies in moments that do not demand attention, inviting the listener to drift rather than focus. The strip's glow remains visible from afar, steady and unchanged. It feels less like a destination and more like a landmark, a fixed point in a shifting world. Its constancy contrasts gently with the Mojave's fluidity, offering reassurance without dominance. Fallout New Vegas presents this balance without commentary, allowing the listener to sense its significance intuitively. Night arrives quietly. Stars emerge one by one, filling the sky with a depth that feels almost endless. The desert cools, and sounds carry farther in the still air. Fires crackle softly, conversations lower to murmurs. Fallout New Vegas uses these nighttime moments to slow the world even further, encouraging rest and reflection. The radio's familiar voice drifts across the open land, unchanged by distance or time. Songs from another era feel less like nostalgia and more like companionship, steady markers in a landscape defined by movement. Fallout New Vegas understands how sound anchors memory, allowing it to soften silence rather than interrupt it. In this stillness, the Mojave feels complete without being resolved. Its future remains open, shaped by choices that will come slowly, if at all. Fallout New Vegas does not rush toward conclusions. It allows the listener to exist within uncertainty, to find comfort in continuation rather than outcome. The desert has learned how to endure without explanation. It does not justify itself. It does not seek approval. It simply remains, offering space, silence, and subtle guidance to those who pass through. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to rest in that presence, to let the world unfold at its own pace. This is the Mojave, when nothing is being decided and everything is being lived, a land defined not by victory or defeat, but by persistence. As the journey continues, unhurried and open-ended, the Mojave remains steady beneath an endless sky, carrying its stories softly forward, one quiet moment at a time. The Mojave feels almost weightless here, as if the land has settled into a state where nothing presses forward and nothing pulls back. Time stretches gently, unmarked by urgency or expectation. Fallout New Vegas thrives in this space, where the world exists not to be conquered or resolved, but simply to be inhabited. The desert does not demand decisions, it allows them to form slowly, if they form at all. Movement through the Mojave becomes less about destination and more about awareness. The sound of boots on cracked pavement, the subtle shift of sand beneath each step, the way distant structures grow clearer and then fade again as paths curve away. Fallout New Vegas lets these sensations carry meaning without explanation, trusting the listener to feel the rhythm rather than analyze it. The land speaks softly, and only to those willing to listen. People encountered along the way feel grounded in this same patience. Conversations drift rather than rush. Questions are answered carefully without excess detail. There is an understanding here that words carry weight, and silence is often more useful than certainty. Fallout New Vegas presents dialogue as part of the environment, shaped by the Mojave's vastness and the knowledge that nothing needs to be said immediately. Settlements continue their quiet routines, unbothered by the scale of conflict surrounding them. Crops are tended, repairs are made, meals are shared without ceremony. These acts are not framed as hopeful or tragic, they simply are. Fallout New Vegas understands that survival often looks unremarkable, sustained by repetition rather than heroism. The Mojave's factions still exist, but they feel distant here, their influence softened by space and time. NCR patrols pass occasionally, their presence more symbolic than authoritative. Legion scouts remain rumors carried on the wind. House's Securitrons appear rarely, glimpsed at a distance before disappearing again. Fallout New Vegas allows these forces to recede into the background, reminding the listener that most of life unfolds far from centers of power. The land itself remains the most consistent presence. It absorbs footsteps, voices, and conflict alike, offering no reaction beyond endurance. Fallout New Vegas uses this neutrality to create calm, allowing the listener to feel supported by a world that does not demand allegiance or resolution. Old world ruins blend seamlessly into daily life. A collapsed gas station becomes a rest stop. A broken bridge becomes a landmark rather than an obstacle. Fallout New Vegas treats these remnants not as symbols of loss, but as practical features of the present, reshaped by necessity and familiarity. As the sun lowers, the Mojave's colors shift subtly, shadows lengthening without drama. The heat softens, the air grows still. Fallout New Vegas excels in these transitions, allowing them to unfold slowly, without cue or announcement. The world feels balanced here, neither advancing nor retreating. Night arrives gently, carrying a quiet clarity. Stars fill the sky, vast and unchanging. The strip's glow remains visible but distant, its lights steady against the darkness. Fires burn low in settlements, offering warmth without drawing attention. Fallout New Vegas uses these nighttime moments to encourage rest, creating space for the listener to drift. The radio hums softly, its familiar songs floating through the open land. The music feels less like memory and more like continuity, something that connects moments rather than eras. Fallout New Vegas understands how sound can anchor calm, using it to soften silence rather than replace it. In this stillness, the Mojave feels complete, not finished, not resolved, but whole in its uncertainty. Fallout New Vegas does not ask the listener to decide the future. It invites them to exist within the present, to find comfort in endurance rather than outcome. The desert remains patient, offering its vastness without expectation. It does not rush the story forward. It allows it to unfold at the pace of footsteps, of days passing quietly beneath the sun and stars. Fallout New Vegas embraces this patience, letting the world breathe, and as the journey continues, unmarked by urgency or destination, the Mojave stays exactly as it is: open, steady, and quietly alive. A land shaped not by control or conquest, but by the simple act of continuing on, moment by moment, beneath an endless sky that watches without judgment. The Mojave remains unhurried, as though it has long since learned that nothing gains clarity by being rushed. By now, the land feels familiar in a way that goes beyond recognition. It feels known, not because every path has been walked, but because its rhythms have settled into understanding. Fallout New Vegas allows this familiarity to form naturally, through time spent rather than milestones reached. The long highways feel less like routes and more like quiet companions. Their cracked surfaces carry the memory of countless journeys, some purposeful, some aimless, all absorbed without judgment. Traveling these roads no longer feels like moving through danger, it feels like moving through continuity. Fallout New Vegas treats travel as a state of being rather than a challenge, allowing the listener to rest within movement itself. People encountered along these roads speak with an ease shaped by experience. There is no need to explain the land or warn against it. Those who live here already understand what it asks of them. Conversations drift toward practical matters, shared observations, and gentle humor that carries no urgency. Fallout New Vegas uses this tone to reinforce the idea that survival here is less about preparation and more about familiarity. Settlements blend into the landscape, their boundaries softened by time and routine. Fences lean, buildings weather quietly, lights flicker on and off at predictable hours. These places feel less like shelters and more like extensions of the land itself. Fallout New Vegas presents this integration as a sign of endurance, showing how communities survive by adapting to their environment rather than reshaping it entirely. The Mojave's conflicts feel distant now, their edges blurred by repetition. Stories of shifting control and distant battles pass through settlements without altering daily life. People listen, nod, and return to their work. Fallout New Vegas emphasizes how most lives continue alongside history rather than inside it, shaped more by habit than by headlines. Nature continues its steady influence. The desert responds to weather, season, and time without concern for human plans. Wildlife moves along established paths, avoiding danger when possible and adapting when necessary. Fallout New Vegas allows this coexistence to remain calm, grounding the world in a sense of balance that persists despite instability. Old world structures continue to serve quiet roles. A water tower becomes a navigational marker. A collapsed overpass offers shade. A weathered sign still points the way, even if the destination no longer exists. Fallout New Vegas treats these remnants with gentle neutrality, emphasizing usefulness over symbolism. As daylight fades, the Mojave's vastness becomes more pronounced. The sky stretches wide, colors softening as the sun lowers. Shadows lengthen without drama. Fallout New Vegas excels in these transitions, allowing them to unfold slowly without signaling importance. The world feels steady, complete in its simplicity. Night arrives with familiar calm. The air cools. Sounds carry farther. Fires glow softly in the distance, marking safe places without drawing attention. The strip remains visible on the horizon, its lights steady and unchanged. Fallout New Vegas uses these nighttime moments to deepen restfulness, offering stillness rather than suspense. The radio continues to hum gently, its songs drifting across the desert like shared memories. The music does not compete with the silence, it complements it, filling space without crowding it. Fallout New Vegas understands how sound can anchor calm, allowing familiarity to soothe without distraction. In this quiet stretch, the Mojave feels resolved without resolution. Its future remains open, its past integrated into the present. Fallout New Vegas does not demand conclusions or climaxes. It allows life to continue at its own pace, shaped by small choices and steady movement. The land offers no answers, only presence. It does not instruct or judge, it simply remains, vast and patient. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to accept this presence, to rest within a world that does not rush forward or pull backward. And so the journey continues, not toward an ending, but onward into familiarity. The Mojave stays steady beneath an endless sky, carrying its quiet stories forward without urgency. In this stillness, the world feels complete, not because it has been finished, but because it continues, moment by moment, exactly as it is. The Mojave seems to grow quieter still, as though even the idea of motion has slowed to a gentle drift. At this point, the land feels less like something being crossed and more like something being shared. Fallout New Vegas allows the listener to exist within this shared space where nothing presses forward and nothing lingers behind. Time stretches softly, measured not in hours or days, but in the steady repetition of familiar moments. Paths through the desert feel worn not by haste, but by patience. Footprints fade quickly here, reclaimed by wind and sand, reminding anyone who passes through that permanence is rare and subtle. Fallout New Vegas uses this impermanence to create calm rather than tension, allowing the world to feel open and forgiving instead of fragile. Encounters along the road are brief and unremarkable in the best possible way. A nod exchanged in passing, a few quiet words shared before paths diverge again. These moments do not linger, yet they add texture to the journey. Fallout New Vegas understands that connection does not always need to deepen to be meaningful. Sometimes, it is enough simply to acknowledge another presence before moving on. Settlements continue to exist in harmony with this pace. Doors open and close without ceremony. Repairs are made when needed, not rushed or delayed. Life unfolds with a sense of acceptance, shaped by experience rather than expectation. Fallout New Vegas treats this acceptance as strength, showing how stability emerges when people stop resisting the land and begin listening to it instead. The Mojave's factions feel almost symbolic now, their struggles distant and abstract. Flags and borders exist, but they rarely interrupt the flow of daily life here. Fallout New Vegas allows these power structures to fade into the background, emphasizing that most people live beyond the reach of ideology, guided more by routine than allegiance. Nature remains the Mojave's most constant teacher. The desert offers lessons quietly about preparation, restraint, and respect. Those who listen endure. Those who ignore these lessons are corrected gently or harshly, depending on circumstance. Fallout New Vegas presents this relationship without judgment, allowing the land to remain neutral and steady. Old world remnants feel fully absorbed into the present now. They no longer stand out as relics or warnings. They are simply part of the environment, shaped by time and necessity. Fallout New Vegas treats these structures with familiarity, reinforcing the idea that the past does not disappear, but settles into usefulness. As evening approaches, the Mojave's colors soften again, repeating a pattern that feels comforting rather than monotonous. The transition from day to night arrives without urgency, and with it comes a familiar sense of rest. Fallout New Vegas excels in these cyclical moments, using repetition to soothe rather than dull. Night settles across the desert with quiet confidence. The stars appear unchanged, steady and distant. Fires glow softly where people gather, marking safe spaces without drawing attention. The Strip's lights remain a constant point on the horizon, unchanged by distance or time. Fallout New Vegas uses this consistency to create emotional grounding, offering reassurance through familiarity. The radio's gentle hum returns, its voice calm and unhurried. Songs drift through the open land, blending memory with the present moment. Fallout New Vegas understands that comfort often comes not from novelty, but from repetition that feels safe. In this deep quiet, the Mojave feels whole, not complete, not resolved, but balanced. The land does not push toward an ending. It allows life to continue as it always has, uneven, imperfect, and persistent. Fallout New Vegas embraces this openness, allowing the listener to rest without expectation. There is no need to decide anything here, no pressure to move faster or slower. The Mojave offers its space freely, asking only that those within it move with care and attention. Fallout New Vegas invites the listener to drift within this space, to let thoughts settle and fade as gently as the desert wind. And as the journey carries on, unmarked and unmeasured, the Mojave remains exactly as it has always been, vast, patient, and quietly alive. A land that does not demand resolution, only presence, offering its stillness as a place to rest while the world continues softly onward beneath an endless sky. The Mojave feels almost suspended now, as if it exists in a space where beginnings and endings no longer matter. Everything that needs to happen is already happening, quietly and without effort. Fallout New Vegas rests comfortably in this stillness, allowing the world to feel complete, not through resolution, but through continuity. The desert does not move toward conclusions. It simply continues, steady and patient. Walking through the open land feels less like travel and more like drifting. Distances lose their sharpness, time stretches and softens, marked only by the rise and fall of light across the sand. Fallout New Vegas understands how this sensation settles the mind, letting awareness float gently without fixing itself on any single thought or destination. The Mojave's presence feels reassuring here. It does not change suddenly or demand adaptation without warning. The land offers subtle cues, quiet signals that guide those who pay attention. A shift in air, a change in sound, the way shadows lengthen along familiar paths. Fallout New Vegas treats these details with care, allowing them to exist as background rather than focus. Encounters with others feel calm and unremarkable, a shared moment of rest, a few exchanged words that carry no urgency. People pass through one another's lives briefly, leaving behind no weight, only acknowledgement. Fallout New Vegas presents these interactions as gentle affirmations of shared endurance rather than moments of consequence. Settlements continue their routines, unbroken by expectation. Fires are lit as evening approaches. Tools are set aside at day's end. Doors are closed softly, not locked tightly. Fallout New Vegas shows how safety emerges not from control, but from familiarity built over time. The Mojave's larger conflicts feel almost theoretical now, distant enough to lose their sharp edges. Stories of power and control fade into the background, replaced by the immediate reality of living one day at a time. Fallout New Vegas allows this shift naturally, reinforcing that most lives are shaped by consistency rather than confrontation. Nature continues its quiet balance. The desert breathes slowly, cooling as night settles in. Wildlife moves through familiar paths, unbothered by the passing of time. Fallout New Vegas keeps this natural rhythm present, grounding the world in something larger and steadier than human ambition. Old world structures feel fully at peace within the landscape. They no longer stand as reminders of loss or ambition. They simply exist, shaped by weather and use, serving whatever purpose the present requires. Fallout New Vegas treats these remnants as neutral, allowing them to fade into the land without commentary. The sky opens wide as night deepens, stars steady and unchanged. Their presence feels comforting rather than distant, anchoring the desert beneath them. Fallout New Vegas uses this vastness to quiet the mind, inviting stillness rather than reflection. The radio hums softly once more, its familiar voice steady and calm. The music carries no urgency, no demand for attention. It simply fills the space gently, offering continuity across time and distance. Fallout New Vegas understands how familiarity can soothe, allowing repetition to become restful. In this deep quiet, the Mojave feels settled, not finished, not resolved, but balanced in its imperfection. There is no need for answers here, no need for direction. Fallout New Vegas allows the listener to rest in this absence of demand, to let the world exist without interpretation. The land remains open, patient, and enduring. It does not rush toward change, nor does it resist it. It accepts what comes and releases what passes. Fallout New Vegas embraces this philosophy, allowing the world to feel alive without feeling urgent. And as the journey continues beyond measure or marker, the Mojave stays exactly as it is, vast, quiet, and steady. A place where nothing needs to be decided and nothing needs to end. Only the gentle continuation of days beneath an endless sky, carrying life forward softly, one moment at a time. The Mojave remains calm, as though it has reached a depth of quiet where even thought begins to slow. At this stage, the land feels less like a setting and more like a state of mind, open and spacious, offering rest simply by existing. Fallout New Vegas settles comfortably into this feeling, allowing the world to feel complete without asking anything of those who move through it. Movement now feels effortless. Steps follow familiar rhythms without conscious planning. Paths curve gently through the desert, guiding without instruction. Fallout New Vegas understands how repetition creates comfort, letting the listener drift through space without needing to track distance or direction. The Mojave does not test endurance here, it supports it. The air feels steady and unchanging. Sounds carry softly across open ground, never sharp or demanding. A distant breeze moves through dry grass. Metal creaks gently where it has rested for years. Fallout New Vegas allows these quiet details to exist without emphasis, forming a soundscape that soothes rather than stimulates. People encountered along the way feel at ease within this stillness. Conversations are brief, often unnecessary. A shared nod or quiet acknowledgement replaces long explanations. Fallout New Vegas presents connection here as something simple and unforced, shaped by mutual understanding rather than expectation. Settlements continue their gentle routines, almost unnoticed. Lights appear as night approaches, marking spaces of warmth without drawing attention. Doors close softly, fires burn low. Fallout New Vegas treats these moments as natural extensions of the land's rhythm, reinforcing the sense that life continues without urgency. The Mojave's conflicts feel fully distant now, their influence reduced to faint echoes. Power struggles exist somewhere beyond the horizon, but they no longer shape the present moment. Fallout New Vegas allows this distance to create calm, reminding the listener that not every story demands immediate resolution. Nature maintains its quiet balance. The desert cools gradually as night settles in. Stars emerge slowly, filling the sky with steady light. Wildlife moves through familiar paths, undisturbed by human presence. Fallout New Vegas grounds its world in this consistency, offering reassurance through repetition. Old world remnants rest peacefully within the landscape. Rusted structures blend seamlessly into sand and stone. Signs fade gently under the sun. Fallout New Vegas presents these remnants without weight or judgment, allowing them to exist as part of the present rather than reminders of loss. The radio returns once more, its familiar tone steady and calm. Music drifts through the open air, neither nostalgic nor intrusive, simply present. Fallout New Vegas understands how sound can anchor rest, letting familiarity settle the mind without demanding attention. In this deep quiet, the Mojave feels whole, not because everything has been decided, but because nothing needs to be. Fallout New Vegas does not push toward an ending. It allows the world to remain open, inviting the listener to rest within uncertainty without discomfort. Time feels generous here. Moments stretch without pressure, thoughts drift freely and then fade. Fallout New Vegas embraces this openness, creating space for calm rather than direction. The desert offers no answers, only presence. It does not instruct or persuade. It simply remains, vast and steady beneath the night sky. Fallout New Vegas allows this presence to carry the experience forward, gently and without interruption. And as the journey continues beyond markers or measure, the Mojave stays exactly as it is: quiet, patient, and enduring. A land that does not rush toward resolution, but carries life softly forward, moment by moment, beneath an endless sky that watches without judgment. The Mojave feels almost entirely still now, as if it has settled into a depth of calm that no longer shifts with time or movement. At this point, the land does not feel like something being experienced so much as something being shared. Fallout New Vegas rests comfortably in this space, allowing the world to exist without narrative weight, without direction, without expectation. Everything that needs to happen is already happening, quietly and gently. Walking here feels less like traveling and more like floating. The ground passes beneath without resistance, and distance loses its meaning. There is no urgency to arrive anywhere, no pressure to continue or stop. Fallout New Vegas understands how this absence of demand creates rest, letting the listener remain present without needing to engage or decide. The desert sounds soften even further. Wind moves lightly across open ground, loose metal shifts faintly where it has rested for years. These sounds do not interrupt the silence, they become part of it. Fallout New Vegas treats sound as texture rather than signal, allowing it to soothe rather than alert. Encounters with others feel rare and gentle. When they happen, they pass quietly, without significance or consequence, a brief exchange of words, a shared moment of stillness. Then, separation, unmarked and unremarked. Fallout New Vegas presents these interactions as natural and complete, needing nothing more than acknowledgement. Settlements continue their quiet existence, barely noticeable unless one pauses to observe. Lights glow faintly in the distance. Fires burn low, steady and warm. There is no sense of anticipation or fear. Life continues simply because it does. Fallout New Vegas shows how endurance can feel calm rather than strained. The Mojave's larger conflicts feel entirely removed here, their influence reduced to distant memory. Power, control, and ambition no longer shape the moment. Fallout New Vegas allows this distance to create peace, emphasizing that most of existence unfolds far from moments of decision. Nature remains steady and impartial. The night air cools gradually, stars remain fixed and unchanged. The desert breathes slowly, offering balance without instruction. Fallout New Vegas grounds the world in this natural rhythm, allowing the listener to rest within something larger and more consistent than human concern. Old world structures blend completely into the land. Rust, sand, and stone soften their edges until they no longer stand apart. Fallout New Vegas treats these remnants without meaning or symbolism, letting them exist simply as part of the present. The radio's voice returns faintly, familiar and calm. Music drifts across the open land, gentle and unhurried. It does not draw focus, it simply accompanies the moment. Fallout New Vegas understands how repetition and familiarity can become comforting when nothing else demands attention. In this stillness, the Mojave feels neither unfinished nor complete. It simply is. Fallout New Vegas does not seek to resolve its world. It allows it to remain open, spacious, and quiet. Thoughts slow naturally here. The mind drifts without effort, guided by the steady presence of the land. Fallout New Vegas creates space for rest, not by removing the world, but by allowing it to settle into calm. There is no need for conclusions, no need for reflection or understanding. The Mojave offers its silence freely, asking nothing in return. Fallout New Vegas embraces this generosity, allowing the listener to exist without expectation. And as the journey continues beyond awareness or measure, the desert remains unchanged, vast, patient, and gently alive. A place where nothing presses forward and nothing pulls back, carrying life softly onward beneath an endless sky, moment by moment, without hurry, without end. The desert stretches outward in every direction, wide and unbroken, offering a sense of space that feels almost endless. There is no need to name this place for it to be understood. Its identity is carried in the way the land breathes, in the way silence settles naturally rather than abruptly. Here, the world does not ask for attention, it allows presence. Fallout New Vegas finds its deepest calm in moments like these, where the land exists simply to be inhabited, not interpreted. Movement across this open ground feels slow and deliberate, even when no effort is made to slow down. Each step lands softly, absorbed by dust and time. Distance becomes abstract, measured less by miles and more by how the light shifts across the ground. The sun arcs patiently overhead, marking time without urgency. There is comfort in this predictability, in knowing that nothing sudden will interrupt the rhythm of the day. Old roads guide travel gently, their cracked surfaces worn smooth by decades of use. They do not insist on direction, they merely suggest it. Following them feels natural, like allowing the land to choose the path instead of forcing one. Fallout New Vegas understands how these quiet choices can feel restful, removing the pressure of decision and replacing it with trust in what already exists. Structures appear occasionally along the horizon, softened by distance. They grow clearer for a time, then fade again as the path curves away. These moments feel fleeting and unimportant, and that is precisely their strength. The world does not revolve around destinations here. It revolves around continuity. Places matter, but only briefly before becoming part of the background once more. Those who live in this land move with a familiarity shaped by long experience. Their routines are unremarkable, yet deeply grounding. Water is gathered, tools are maintained, meals are prepared without ceremony. These acts are not framed as survival strategies. They are simply how life continues. Fallout New Vegas presents these moments without emphasis, allowing them to exist as the quiet foundation beneath everything else. Conversation, when it happens, is unhurried. Words are chosen carefully, often sparingly. Silence is not uncomfortable here, it is expected. People understand that not every thought needs to be shared, and not every question needs an answer. This restraint gives interactions a gentle weight, making even brief exchanges feel complete. As daylight fades, the land changes subtly. Colors soften, shadows stretch without drama. The air cools gradually, signaling rest rather than warning. This transition happens every day, and yet it never feels repetitive. Fallout New Vegas captures this cycle with patience, allowing the listener to settle into its familiarity rather than anticipating what comes next. Night arrives quietly, carrying with it a vast sky filled with steady points of light. Stars feel closer here, unfiltered and unchanged. They do not draw attention to themselves. They simply exist, offering a sense of scale that makes personal concerns feel lighter. Under this sky, the world feels stable, held in place by something older and more enduring than human intention. Fires glow softly in the distance, marking places where people have gathered for warmth rather than defense. Their light flickers gently, never sharp, never demanding. The presence of others is reassuring without being intrusive. Life continues nearby, but it does not press in. Sound moves differently at night. Footsteps carry farther, voices soften naturally. Even mechanical hums seem quieter, as if the world itself has chosen to lower its volume. Fallout New Vegas uses this restraint to create rest, allowing the listener to feel supported by a soundscape that never overwhelms. Remnants of the old world remain scattered across the land, but they no longer command attention. Rusted structures, faded signs, and collapsed buildings blend seamlessly into the environment. They are not warnings or lessons, they are simply part of what is. Time has softened their edges, removing urgency and leaving only presence. Technology persists quietly, functioning where it can and resting where it cannot. Radios hum gently, offering familiar voices that drift across the open space without breaking the calm. Terminals glow faintly in darkened rooms, preserving fragments of information that may never be read again. Fallout New Vegas treats these elements not as relics, but as background companions, steady and unobtrusive. Life here feels guided by intuition rather than planning. People learn where to walk, when to rest, and how long to wait by paying attention rather than following rules. This intuitive rhythm creates a sense of balance that no structure ever fully achieved. Fallout New Vegas allows this balance to emerge naturally without explanation or instruction. The land itself feels neutral and patient. It does not reward ambition or punish hesitation. It responds only to consistency and care. Those who respect its pace endure. Those who rush are gently corrected by exhaustion rather than catastrophe. This quiet feedback loop shapes behavior over time, teaching without words. As hours pass, thoughts begin to slow. The mind no longer searches for meaning or resolution. It drifts, guided by repetition and familiarity. Fallout New Vegas excels in creating this mental space where awareness softens and focus becomes unnecessary. Settlements encountered along the way feel less like destinations and more like pauses, a place to rest, a place to exchange a few words, a place to continue from. They do not hold on to travelers. They allow movement to resume naturally without obligation or expectation. Even conflict, when mentioned, feels distant and abstract. Stories of power and control arrive muted, stripped of urgency by time and distance. They are acknowledged, then set aside. Fallout New Vegas emphasizes how most lives unfold alongside these narratives, rather than within them, shaped by routine rather than resolution. The night deepens, and with it comes a sense of completion that does not require an ending. Everything that needs to exist already does. There is no pressure to move forward or look back. The present moment stretches comfortably, supported by the steady presence of land, sky, and quiet companionship. Breathing slows, muscles relax, awareness narrows gently, focusing less on surroundings and more on sensation. Fallout New Vegas creates this effect through consistency rather than drama, allowing the world to fade softly rather than disappear. There is no lesson being taught here, no conclusion waiting to be reached. The land offers only itself open, steady, and enduring. That offering is enough. And as time continues unmeasured, the desert remains unchanged, wide, calm, patient. Life moves through it quietly, carried forward not by urgency or purpose, but by the simple act of continuing. In this stillness, rest comes easily, supported by a world that asks for nothing and provides space enough for everything to slow, settle, and drift onward beneath a vast, unbroken sky. The land opens outward with no clear edge, a wide expanse where distance feels gentle rather than daunting. There is a sense of openness here that invites stillness, as if the world itself has decided to slow down. Nothing rushes forward, nothing falls behind. Time stretches softly, shaped by light, shadow, and the quiet persistence of place. Fallout New Vegas finds comfort in this openness, allowing the listener to exist without expectation or direction. Movement through this space feels almost automatic. Each step follows the last without conscious effort, guided by habit rather than intention. The ground carries the weight easily, absorbing sound and motion alike. Dust settles quickly, erasing traces of passage, reminding anyone who walks here that the land does not hold on to what moves through it. There is peace in this impermanence, a reassurance that nothing needs to linger longer than it wishes. Old highways drift across the terrain in long, patient lines. Their faded markings no longer dictate speed or destination. They serve instead as quiet guides, offering structure without pressure. Following them feels restful, like trusting something that has already endured long enough to know where it leads. Fallout New Vegas understands how comfort can arise from surrendering choice, from letting familiar paths carry the journey forward. Structures appear occasionally, softened by distance and time. Their shapes are recognizable but unimportant, landmarks rather than goals. They pass slowly through view, then slip back into the background as the land reclaims attention. Nothing here insists on arrival. Presence matters more than progress. Those who live in this place move with a calm confidence born of familiarity. Their lives are shaped by repetition rather than ambition. Water is gathered at the same times each day. Tools are repaired carefully, not rushed. Food is prepared with steady hands, guided by memory more than recipe. These routines are not celebrated or questioned. They simply continue, forming the quiet backbone of survival. Conversation unfolds at the same pace. Words are exchanged slowly, thoughtfully, often with long pauses in between. Silence feels natural here, not empty. It carries meaning of its own, offering rest between thoughts. People understand that speaking less can sometimes say more, and that not every moment requires explanation. As the day shifts, the land responds gently. Light softens, shadows lengthen without urgency. The air cools gradually, signaling change without warning. These transitions repeat endlessly, yet never feel dull. Fallout New Vegas captures the comfort of cycles, showing how repetition can calm rather than confine. Night arrives without announcement. The sky opens wide, filled with steady points of light that feel ancient and unchanged. Stars do not flicker here. They hold their place, offering quiet reassurance through consistency. Under this vast sky, concerns feel smaller, lighter, easier to set down. Fires glow softly where people have gathered, their warmth shared without ceremony. The light they cast is gentle, never sharp, blending naturally into the darkness around it. There is comfort in knowing others are nearby, even when they remain unseen. Presence does not require proximity. Sound travels differently after sunset. It stretches farther, yet feels softer. Footsteps echo faintly before fading away. Voices lower instinctively, guided by the stillness around them. Even mechanical hums seem subdued, as if the world itself has chosen to rest. Fallout New Vegas uses this restraint to create a soundscape that supports relaxation rather than demanding attention. Remnants of earlier times remain scattered across the land, but they no longer stand apart. Rusted metal blends into stone and sand. Faded signs lose their messages, becoming shapes rather than instructions. Collapsed structures offer shelter without symbolism. Time has softened their meaning, leaving only usefulness behind. Technology continues quietly where it can. Radios hum with familiar voices, their tones steady and calm. Terminals glow faintly in dark spaces, preserving fragments of information that no longer ask to be read. These elements exist without urgency, woven naturally into the environment rather than dominating it. Life here follows intuition more than planning. People learn when to move, when to rest, and when to wait by paying attention to subtle cues. The land offers guidance gently, through weather, sound, and rhythm. Fallout New Vegas presents this relationship as balanced and respectful, shaped by observation rather than control. The ground itself feels patient. It does not resist movement or invite haste. It responds simply to consistency. Over time, this patience shapes behavior, encouraging steadiness over speed. The result is a way of living that feels grounded, supported by the land rather than challenged by it. As hours pass, thought begins to slow naturally. The mind drifts without effort, moving from one idea to the next before settling into quiet. There is no need to focus or reflect. Awareness softens, guided by the steady presence of surroundings. Fallout New Vegas excels at creating this mental space where rest emerges organically. Places encountered along the way feel temporary, even when they have stood for generations. They serve their purpose, then allow movement to continue. There is no pressure to stay, no obligation to leave. The balance between pause and motion feels effortless, guided by comfort rather than necessity. Stories of conflict, when they surface, feel distant and muted. They arrive stripped of urgency, acknowledged briefly before fading away. Life here continues alongside these narratives without being consumed by them. Fallout New Vegas emphasizes how most existence unfolds beyond moments of decision, shaped instead by routine and endurance. The night deepens, carrying a sense of completeness that does not require closure. Everything that needs to exist already does. There is no tension pulling toward tomorrow, no regret pulling toward yesterday. The present moment stretches comfortably, supported by quiet sounds and gentle light. Breathing slows in response to this calm. Muscles relax. Awareness narrows naturally, focusing less on surroundings and more on sensation. The world does not fade away, it settles, becoming softer and less demanding. Fallout New Vegas achieves this through consistency rather than spectacle, allowing rest to arrive without effort. There is no lesson hidden here, no message waiting to be uncovered. The land offers only space, silence, and continuity. That offering is enough. In this stillness, meaning becomes unnecessary. Time continues without markers. Moments blend into one another, smooth and unbroken. The world carries on not because it must, but because it can. Movement persists quietly, guided by habit rather than urgency, and so the land remains open and patient, wide enough to hold both motion and rest. Life passes through it gently, leaving little behind and taking little with it. In this calm, sleep comes easily, supported by a world that does not ask for attention or effort. Everything slows, everything settles, and beneath a vast, quiet sky, the gentle continuation of existence carries on, steady and unhurried, allowing thought, tension, and wakefulness to drift away at their own pace. The world feels wide and unburdened here, as if space itself has softened. Nothing presses inward, nothing pulls away. There is room to breathe, room to pause, room to exist without effort. The land stretches outward calmly, offering no challenge and no demand, only the steady reassurance that it will remain exactly as it is, moment after moment. Fallout New Vegas finds its deepest rest in this openness, where the environment no longer frames a story, but becomes a gentle backdrop for stillness. Movement feels optional now. Whether standing still or drifting forward, the sensation is the same, supported, unhurried, and quiet. The ground holds each step without resistance, absorbing sound and weight alike. Dust settles quickly, smoothing away signs of passage. There is comfort in knowing that nothing here needs to be preserved or remembered. The land does not collect history, it allows it to pass through. Long stretches of open space guide the body into an easy rhythm. Breathing slows naturally, syncing with the calm pace of the surroundings. Muscles relax without instruction. The act of moving becomes almost subconscious, guided by habit rather than intention. Fallout New Vegas understands how this gentle repetition eases the mind, allowing awareness to soften without disappearing. Old paths remain visible, not as commands, but as suggestions. Their faded surfaces offer familiarity without obligation. Following them feels safe, not because they guarantee direction, but because they ask nothing in return. There is peace in trusting what has already endured, in allowing well-worn routes to carry motion forward without thought. Structures appear and fade at a distance, their presence subtle and fleeting. They do not demand attention or invite exploration. They simply exist for a moment, then recede back into the background. These glimpses feel unimportant, and that is what makes them calming. Nothing here insists on meaning or purpose. Those who inhabit this land move quietly within it, shaped by experience rather than urgency. Their lives unfold through routine, simple, repeated actions that require no explanation. Water is gathered steadily. Tools are checked and maintained. Food is prepared with care, not haste. These moments do not mark progress or achievement. They mark continuity. Conversation flows at the same gentle pace. Words are spoken when needed and allowed to fade when they are not. Silence is never awkward. It is expected, even welcome. People understand that quiet can hold as much comfort as speech, and that presence does not require constant expression. As the light shifts across the land, the change feels gradual and soothing. Brightness softens without warning. Shadows lengthen without drama. The air cools gently, inviting rest rather than signaling danger. This transition repeats endlessly, yet never feels monotonous. Fallout New Vegas captures the calm of cycles, showing how repetition can feel grounding instead of confining. When night arrives, it does so peacefully. The sky opens wide, revealing countless steady points of light that feel distant yet reassuring. These stars do not flicker or demand attention. They simply remain, offering a sense of scale that quiets the mind. Under this vast canopy, worries feel smaller, easier to release. Soft glows appear where people have settled for the evening. Fires burn low and steady, casting warm light that does not intrude on the surrounding darkness. These lights feel comforting without drawing focus, reminders that life continues nearby without pressing in. Sound behaves differently after sunset. It travels farther but feels muted, cushioned by still air. Footsteps echo briefly, then fade, voices lower instinctively. Even the faint hum of machinery seems gentler, as though the world itself has chosen to rest. Fallout New Vegas uses this restraint to create a soundscape that supports relaxation rather than interrupting it. Remnants of earlier times blend completely into their surroundings. Rusted metal softens under sand and wind. Old signs lose their messages, becoming shapes rather than instructions. Collapsed buildings offer shelter without story or symbolism. Time has stripped these objects of urgency, leaving only quiet usefulness behind. Technology persists without emphasis. Radios hum softly, carrying familiar voices that drift without demanding attention. Terminals glow faintly in darkened spaces, holding fragments of information that no longer call out to be read. These elements exist calmly, woven into the environment rather than standing apart from it. Life here feels guided by intuition more than planning. People learn when to move, when to rest, and when to wait by observing subtle cues rather than following strict rules. The land offers guidance gently, through rhythm and consistency. Those who listen adapt naturally, without struggle. The ground itself feels patient and supportive. It does not reward speed or punish hesitation. It responds simply to steady movement and care. Over time, this quiet feedback shapes behavior, encouraging balance rather than ambition. Fallout New Vegas presents this relationship as respectful and mutual, shaped by observation rather than control. As hours pass, thought begins to slow without effort. The mind drifts freely, no longer searching for direction or resolution. Awareness softens, settling into the present moment. There is no need to reflect or plan. The world provides enough structure on its own. Places encountered along the way feel temporary, even when they have existed for generations. They serve as pauses rather than destinations. A place to rest, a place to continue from. There is no pressure to remain and no urgency to leave. Movement resumes naturally, guided by comfort rather than necessity. Stories of conflict, when they surface, arrive quietly and without weight. They are acknowledged briefly, then allowed to pass. Life here unfolds alongside these narratives without being shaped by them. Fallout New Vegas emphasizes how most existence exists beyond moments of decision, grounded instead in routine and endurance. The night deepens, bringing with it a sense of completeness that does not rely on endings. Everything that needs to exist already does. There is no tension pulling toward tomorrow, no regret pulling toward the past. The present moment stretches comfortably, supported by gentle sound and steady darkness. Breathing slows further. The body settles fully into rest. Awareness narrows naturally, focusing less on surroundings and more on sensation. The world does not disappear. It becomes softer, less defined, less demanding. Fallout New Vegas achieves this through consistency rather than spectacle, allowing calm to arrive without effort. There is no lesson hidden here, no conclusion waiting to be uncovered. The land offers only space, quiet, and continuity. That offering is enough. Meaning becomes unnecessary when presence is complete. Time continues without markers. Moments blend smoothly into one another, unbroken and gentle. The world carries on not because it must, but because it can. Movement persists quietly, guided by habit rather than urgency. Everything slows, everything settles. Thought loosens its grip. Awareness drifts gently, supported by a world that does not ask for attention or action. There is nothing to solve, nothing to decide, nothing to prepare for. And so the land remains open and patient, wide enough to hold both motion and rest. Life passes through it softly, leaving little behind and taking little with it. In this calm, sleep comes naturally, carried by a steady environment that asks nothing and offers space enough for the mind to finally let go, drifting onward beneath a vast, quiet sky where everything continues gently, exactly as it should.